While one might look at a map and have a general idea of what political entities there is a lot more to a region than meets the eye. All the way over in East Asia, there lies, or at least used to lie, we will get into it, a group of people that basically changed how most of Asia was both politically and culturally shaped for centuries. A group of people that barely even exist anymore, yet their influence still can be seen in a country as large as China today. We are of course going to be talking about every E4 Ming player's nightmare, the Manchus. Yes, I could have made a video on Japan, China, or somewhere in Southeast Asia if you were feeling spicy, but why do what everybody expects of you? This is obscure history after all. My absolutely irrational hatred for things that are overrated led me to this. Now I'm stuck here talking about the Manchus. But you and I don't care. We are here for the obscure shit, not the normie shit. Anyway, enough idle talk. Let's begin. Now, my completely trustworthy, 100% true sources put the start of Manchu history on the Liao civilizations. But before that, let us talk about ethnography a little bit, the favorite subject of an average 4chan basement dweller. The Manchu people are a part of the wider Tungustic family, a group of people that mainly inhabit eastern Siberia. Other than the Manchus, it also includes the Evenki, the Nanai, the Oroken, and many others. Now that we made that clear, let us get into history. As I said, there were a few Neolithic cultures in Manchuria that mainly inhabited the area around the Liao River. Our knowledge on them is limited, and I don't want to bore your dopamine-deprived brain with Neolithic cultures. The main player to be around this region, China, first established military bases and a bureaucracy here via the state of Yan during the Warring States period. One thing to understand about China is that in its governing style and general mentality towards geopolitics, it is much like the Roman Empire. It is a bureaucracyfying force, if you will. It establishes commanderies that both serve to guard the region and also integrate it to wider China. And by bringing bureaucracy to Liaoning, it also served to bring the Chinese way of life, so to say. A life of governors and bureaucrats. So keep that in mind, as you will soon see that bureaucracy is not something that you fight against. It is a thing that comes about almost naturally and either directly or indirectly serves to make a culture dominant. Anyhow, the Principality of Yan fell to the Qin, which went on to unify China and laid the foundations of what China is today. And yes, the Emperor of Qin was the guy that drank this funny immortality elixir made of mercury and unexpectedly died. Tragic. Skipping many centuries of Chinese dynasties and nomadic federations, we are at the 9th century. The southern portion of Manchuria is ruled by the Bolhea kingdom, which was a multi-ethnic state of both Koreans and Tungustic peoples. One of the largest of these peoples was the Mohe people, which, if I'm not wrong, are the predecessor of the Jurchen peoples, and by that, also the Manchus. Again, after a few centuries, the Khitan people, which were related to the Mongols, formed the Liao dynasty and later conquered Manchuria. The Mohe, now the Jurchen, overthrew the Liao and formed the Jin dynasty and proceeded to manhandle China several times. Sadly, the Khitans were destroyed and assimilated in the process, and we still cannot decipher their language to this day. With the Jin dynasty, the full-on Sinicization of the Jurchen began, but this was not through the force of the Chinese, but the willing Jurchen, making themselves more Chinese, to rule China. As the Chinese, they brought Chinese architects from the south to make the city of Shangjing. They also brought the bureaucrats of the Song dynasty to their capital to help rule their empire, further speeding the Jurchen's integration to the Chinese society. While this was happening, a very angry Mongol man decided that he was to be the ruler of the universe, and united a bunch of Mongol tribes and started attacking the Jin. Apparently our boy Genghis was using console commands, he won against the Jin and annexed it shortly after. This is when a bunch of wild shit happened. The remaining Khitans made their own kingdom and allied with the Mongols. A Jin general decided to make his own dynasty. Because he can. He allied with the Mongols for good measure, but after they beat up the Jin even more together, he decided allying with the Mongols was cringe and fled to an island. I am serious, by the way, this actually happened. But after this, the Khitans too decided allying with the Mongols was cringe and revolted. Horrible times indeed, make men horrible. People shit in the urinal because of stress, and nomadic peoples were no different. Under the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty, Manchus were governed under a single province and seemed to be mostly content with Mongol rule. But good friendships are not to last. As Yuan rule under China collapsed, Manchus went on to support the Yuan and got slapped with them, side by side. The new dynasty in town, Ming, launched some peacekeeping operations on Manchuria to clear the remnants of the Yuan authority. Later they constructed a kick-ass wall to keep the Jurchens out, as is Chinese tradition. Fast forward a century later, and a Jurchen guy named Nurhaci started to bring the Jurchen tribes together. He started eyeing up the Ming provinces and attacked the Ming. He declared himself Khan and formed the Jin dynasty. No, this is the later Jin, so it's completely different. Man, what is with East Asian rulers naming their states after earlier states? It makes everything also confusing. Oh, he also made a name change for the Jurchens. They were no longer Jurchen. Now, they were Manchu, so there's that. Yes, I called them Manchus earlier, what are you gonna do about it? It's my video, I can do whatever I want. Nurhaci's successors later changed the name of the state to Qing dynasty. Much better. Anyway, the Qing beat up some tribes in outer Manchuria and executed an event chief. You know, a normal Friday night. The Qing went on to conquer all of China, and the Manchus asserted their dominance in a very bloody manner. Like, geez, read about the Qing conquest of the Ming later, it's messy. Manchuria, as the ancestral lands of the Manchus, was given a special place among the provinces of the Qing Empire. The eight-banner system was all about the military units that came from Manchuria, and this made Manchuria special. A very special boy indeed. Now, all this talk might lead you to believe that the Manchu people were going through some kind of a golden age, and you won't be wrong, but as I said earlier, bureaucracy is an assimilating force of epic proportions, and the Manchu people, to rule China, bureaucracified themselves, and they gradually began adopting the customs and the traditions of the people they ruled, which the vast majority of was Chinese. Yes, the Qing government was aware of this and did go through with some plans to stop this, and one of the big ones was the Willow Palisade. I guess their plan was to stop the Chinese with their own games. The Willow Palisade was essentially a wall that was to stop Han immigration to Manchuria. But of course, this did not stop a lot of people, especially during famines. A lot of Han people, either legally or illegally, began migrating to Manchuria, since Manchu landlords there wanted cheap labor of Han for their properties. And the Qing, especially later on, straight up broke their own rules and let the Han colonize the area, an area that was sparsely populated. So, the need for cheap labor caused the destruction of an entire culture. It was kinda inevitable anyway, but they allowed the process to speed up. I'm no longer going to comment on this topic. My lawyer said so. Anyhow, in the 1860 Convention of Beijing, Russia annexed what is Outer Manchuria today. There was a lot of drama that happened between the Russians and the Chinese there, but this is not what we are gonna talk about. This is when the Guangdong happened. Essentially, a lot of Chinese farmers went to Manchuria for the good soil there, which further exacerbated things going on more. During the Boxer Rebellion, Russians killed a lot of both Han and Manchu people in Manchuria, which caused them to side with Japan during the Russo-Japanese War. This Japan fella definitely won't cause a little bit of tomfoolery later. Later, the Qing collapsed, as one does as a Chinese dynasty. This is around the time when the Manchus nearly completely Sinicized themselves. There is also not that much more we can say about the Manchus after this point, since a lot of records record them as generally Chinese. In 1931, the Japanese invaded Manchuria and made the state of Manchukuo. The last emperor of the Qing, Puyi, was put on the throne of Manchukuo. Now Manchuria was its own country, and the Qing was back, baby. Surely this will be a time of Manchu revival and East Asian cooperation. Yeah, no, Manchukuo was a glorified slave state with its only objective being exploiting Manchuria as much as possible to strengthen Japan. The emperor was of course nothing but a puppet. So, World War II happened. I don't know if you heard about it. It is like a big deal or something. Japan got manhandled by the USA and the Allies. The USSR invaded Manchuria and made it the base of the CPC. Because fighting in China never stops, baby. Yes, we have another civil war. As you know, CPC won and ruled China ever since. This is where our story kinda stops. Yeah, this is it. Anticlimactic, I know. As you might have noticed, in the later parts of this story, the Manchus were never really a factor anymore. And yes, this sad ending is what we have. Manchus are here to this day, of course, but they're almost the same as the Han. They're indistinguishable. No, what the Manchus did was a mantling of Chinese society. What is seen as traditional Chinese culture is heavily influenced from Manchu culture. The Manchus gave up their own culture to highly affect a bigger other culture. Of course, it is not the people who do this. It happens through centuries of intermingling. Don't be sad that the Manchus are nearly gone. Be happy that they kinda live on as a ghost in one of the biggest cultures in the world.